in some state media to report whatever suits the political leadership. My iPhone is my best friend because it keeps me updated of global breaking news right on my palm. News come to us through our mobile phones right in a matter of lightning speed. Now it is very easy for journalists for facts checking before they publish their news, views, or interviews. The web browser makes every access for journalists to get and give information ethically and correctly. The content of the news itself should be appealing and maintaining and professionalism to the eye of the viewers and readers. Aside from the World Wide Web, media that ranges from digital videos to photos, which have significantly influenced journalism, it will be impossible to make any content for journalists without all the necessary technological tools and equipments. Therefore, the availability of the media tools helps journalists to achieve their goals. Also, the artificial intelligence is becoming an important tool to journalism's future. Now we get both magazine and newspapers right in the web browsers, and the readers like us are the ones who make social media as the fastest way for breaking news. We don't need to wait for the news reader to anchor the news via TV channels and radio. While we should make use of the social media for the larger benefit and welfare of the society, at the same time, we have to be aware of the social media. If not handled carefully, it tends to destroy gratitude, makes life messier. Sometimes fake social media spread news of their own interests, hurting the personal standing of leadership also. We find our own sayings and statements twisted out of context. Journalists must ensure a story that interests what people want to see or reach audiences with a well-structured, faithful, and useful information, which indeed increases the demand in general. Sometimes we see modern technology being abused and misused to weaken public confidence in democratic elections and boost support for populism, jingoism, and authoritarianism. I think technology in journalism is helpful to make the society aware and careful. It provides opportunities to connect with readers and will enhance effectively in the field of journalism with more advantages. Let us overwhelm the challenges it brings and seize the opportunities for the larger welfare of the humanity. Let us not forget, in the new world of post-COVID-19, journalism will definitely transform into tech journalism. I wish you all the best and thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Sujata Koirala, Chairperson of GPK Foundation America. Now I will introduce each of the panelists, and then we allocate time of 7 to 10 minutes for their speech on the topic provided or their presentation they might have. So first I will introduce today now Dr. Sekar Koirala, the influential leader and Central Working Committee member of Nepali Congress. Please welcome him here. Next we have Himangshu Vyas, former Himangshu Vyas, Secretary of All India Congress National Committee and Chairman of Foreign Trade Committee, Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Please welcome
Thank you. Thank you, Somnathji.
Next, we have Honorable Ashish Ray, Ashish Ray is the longest serving Indian foreign correspondent. He is also former editor-at-large at CNN, now international affairs analyst on BBC, and contributor to the Spectator, Financial Times, and Business Standard. He is also the author of a famous book called Laid to Rest. Please welcome Honorable Ashish Ray. He is from London. Next, we have Sanam Arora, Chairperson, National Indian Students and Alumni Union, United Kingdom. Sanam Arora, please welcome Sanam Arora. Next, we have Dr. Pratishta Singh, author and writer, doctorate in Italian languages and politics, former professor in Delhi University, India. Please welcome Dr. Pratishta Singh. Next, we have Andrea Wen, writer and international journalist, public speaker and actress, and filmmaker from Spain. Please welcome Andrea Wen. Next, we have Fardous Askar. I don't see her now. Again, some problem with her she's having technical difficulty. Oh, Fardous Askar, right there. Oh, I saw now. Let's welcome Fardous Askar, founder of Askar Foundation and prominent Jordanian journalist. Next, we have Julie Dennis, musician and project coordinator, and work closely with famous artist George Michael. Julie Dennis. Next.
Don't really know what George has got to do with anything, but there you are. There are many other things.
Thank you. Priyanka Sharma, senior correspondent and Gujarat Bureau Chief of Republic TV. Priyanka Sharma. Then we have Dr. Indrajit S. Saluja, Chief Editor and Publisher of the Indian Panorama, United States. He will be joining soon. Then we have Gopal Baraili, Chief Editor of Nissan News and Nepal's Journalist Union Central Member, and also the Vice President of National Dalit Journalists Union of Nepal. Gopal Baraili. Please welcome Gopal Baraili. Then we have a couple of journalists joining. I just got the message. Let me read out their names. Let me introduce them. We have Achyut Regni, journalist, senior journalist from Nepal. Then we have Ajay Kumar Rai, Vice President of Nepal Trade Union Congress and Global Board Member of International Transport Workers Federation from London, Ajay Kumar Rai. And as I go along with the event, so if some prominent figure will join, I'll acknowledge them as we go along. Now, without any delay, I will welcome Honorable Ashish Ray for his presentation on he's the only longest serving Indian foreign correspondent, and I believe among the panelists he's also the senior most journalist here. Let us listen to him. Please welcome Ashish Ray.
Thank you very much indeed. Let me begin by saying that I had the pleasure of interviewing Prime Minister GP Koirala in Kathmandu in the first half of the 1990s when I was the South Asia Bureau Chief of CNN. It was a very pleasant experience. I do believe that relations between Nepal and India were extremely cordial at that point of time. Having said that, I think the ethics and principles of journalism are no different when it comes to covering a pandemic. It's no different from covering political affairs, because what you need to uphold first and foremost is the truth. So Anything that is suppression of the truth is something media need to reject. Now, this is a difficult proposition because most journalists would not be familiar with the intricacies of medicine, the intricacies of infection, and therefore one has to depend to a large extent on expert opinion. Now, that opinion would come by and large from doctors and health experts, and particularly those who specialize in this area of epidemics and pandemics. And so, that said, I think one has to draw a consensus from the experts and come to a conclusion, which basically would amount to the truth, although that may be less than accurate because we are into what we call virgin territory. This is new ground. We don't know what exactly this infection is about. And therefore, you could be right, but you could be marginally wrong, even if you're putting in your best effort. That said, there's also this factor, I think Sujata Koirala referred to this, that when it came to the 1918 plague, it wasn't until many years later that the actual numbers of casualties came out. In this case, we live in an era which is much more modern. It's 2020, and therefore it may not be too long before the absolute truth emerges. At the same time, I do believe that today the figures that are coming out about infections, about deaths, and the various methods of treatment which are working or not working will be known sooner rather than later as compared to what happened a century ago. Now, talking about South Asia, because a lot of people here are from South Asia, I think India is an alarming case. The best case in South Asia is Bhutan. But at the moment, India is alarming because the largest number of cases, rising new cases per day, is in India and the whole world. And having said that, I think I also believe that it's not just India, but most countries in the world where the reporting is underreporting. In other words, we don't really know if what the official figures are actually correct. We have to go by those figures because we don't have evidence to the contrary as yet. So we go by the official figures, but one day I do believe and I suspect that figures will emerge which would be somewhat different from what they are at the moment in most countries in the world. And when I say that, what I mean is this, that particularly in a developing country, you do not know if there are poor people who are dying of COVID-19 without diagnosis and treatment. So therefore, they do not come into the official figures. But they may well have died of COVID. We don't know. So there will be an assessment in due course. And I feel that we're into this territory of the unknown. At the same time, I think it does not matter as far as a journalist is concerned. We need to uphold to the best of our knowledge, to the best of our abilities, and with total honesty and integrity, the truth. And once that is done, I think we are okay. There will always be, in every country, an effort on the part of the government to give a spin to the figure. For instance, a government will say that the recovery rate is very high, but then the recovery rate is high in most parts of the world. It's nothing unique in any one country. So there we are. We have to look at the right side of it, not be alarmist, be supportive, but at the same time, not suppress the truth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashish Reddy, for your valuable opinion. And if some might have some questions later, we'll get back to you. Next, we have Sanam Arora, Chairperson, of National Indian Students and Alumni Union, United Kingdom. Sanam Arora.
Hi, firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. It's a great pleasure, especially interacting with Ms. Koraila and the rest of the esteemed panelists. So thank you. Ashish has spoken. So from a journalist perspective, I'm not sure what more I could add. What I can add is two perspectives. One to this whole debate. One is from the point of view of a strategy consultant, which is what I am in my day-to-day life. And part of my role is to help lots of asset managers, wealth managers, and other agencies try and figure out how they can best enter new markets or look at profitability through a different lens, etc. My other role, which you referred to, Somnathji, is where I'm the chairperson of a students where we look after all students and alumni of Indian origin. There's a bit of disturbance.
Please unmute your phone. Please unmute your phone. Like I already instructed earlier, if someone is speaking, please, rest of the panelists, please unmute your phone.
Right, thank you. So my view really here is a couple of things. I think COVID-19, this pandemic that we're facing, it's not done anything different to journalism than what it's done to other sectors, right? There were a number of trends that were already in place, and COVID-19 has in many ways accelerated the pace towards those trends. So for instance, and at the heart of all of this is the sort of trend about profitability and economics. So to that end, what has COVID-19 done? It's gotten us to a position of greater suppression of truth in some ways, because there's also in parallel a rise of populism around the world, and as populism grows, there's a greater desire to stop, as you were saying, Somnathji, the real numbers of COVID-19 from coming out, etc. So at the intersection of this populism is an economic trend, which has been exaggerated and accelerated by COVID-19. But as Ashish was saying, I think the first and foremost principle, speaking from a consumer perspective, is that a journalist will give me the truth. But at the same time, speaking from an economic perspective, journalism is an expensive affair. Running a newsroom, running a news outlet, these aren't cheap affairs. So how do we bring about an intersection wherein real truth can come out through established news organizations without compromising on the integrity of the content and without becoming an NGO, right? It is a business at the end of the day. So it is possible to do well by doing good. It is possible to have profit with a purpose. And I think as a consumer of news, as a consumer of honest journalism, there are a few things that need to happen. To my mind, the first of those is that there should be a fund that is created for independent media organizations, which lots of credible organizations, including fact checkers, for example, Alt News, should be able to access. And therein we rely on the generosity of philanthropists, the generosity of lots of individuals who want real news to come out. The second thing that I think urgently needs to happen is the normal person on the street needs to be educated about how to consume news, because there is a proliferation of content out there. There is too much information available. People don't necessarily anymore know where to go. And here, the issue that at the heart of all of this is technology, right? Those who weren't consuming newspapers before, i.e. the poorest of the poor, unfortunately, they're still not getting information. But to them, if anything, technology has increased the information that's available, not decreased it. But the biggest threat here is misinformation and disinformation. And part of that is this whole ongoing debate we've been seeing, for example, with Facebook, right? So this whole point of disinformation being spread through filter bubbles. I'm sure everyone here is aware of the concept of filter bubbles, which is really algorithmically giving you what you already are attuned to, in the way that uncomfortable truths no longer even show up on your newsfeed. So those of us, the middle classes, the sort of more liberal elites of the world who are consuming social media increasingly, and those who weren't previously consuming information through the likes of newspapers, but are now consuming a lot more through social media, the issue we're all facing is one of filter bubbles. And this is where the role of an independent media fund that more of these honest news outlets can have access to and apply for funding from becomes really crucial. And at the same time, we all need to drive a change towards education. Education starts at schools. Education starts in universities. People need to be retaught how to consume information. Now, I went to university at the LSE, and the first thing one of my professors told us was, right, first thing you need to learn is how to Google. And all of us sat back and laughed, going, oh, well, we're really, we think we're intelligent people. We're, all sort of adults here, at university, and we've all reached the LSE, so we must be smart. And he said, well, shudder it all out. The first thing you need to know is how to Google. And that's quite a strong statement, because what that tells us is we don't know how to consume information. And when faced with an overload of information, this is something that needs to start right from school. So as a consumer, we need to understand what are the trends that are being used to manipulate us, and therefore to manipulate democracy as it exists worldwide. What are the tools we can use? So for instance, I no longer actually visit most news websites. My news now will come from Twitter handles that I know I have actually made the effort to go and hunt, for example, in India, honest reporters that I know will report the truth. I will follow their handles directly. I no longer need to follow massive news organizations because I no longer have trust in what they're saying. It's unfortunate, but it's true. So if I can use Twitter, for example, to source my own truth of information, can we as a collective come up with training modules for students at schools to know how to hunt for information? Can we, create greater accountability of our governments, for example, to ensure that we are able to consume information that's correct and honest? And to my mind, the threats to accountability, the threats to press freedom, they've always existed. Pre-COVID, post-COVID, they were always there. COVID's probably exaggerated them and then accelerated them. But the media was never particularly free anyway, unfortunately, is the way I see it. And the final thing I want to end with is by saying that, again, as a consumer, my ability to consume information is very limited. The time I will spend on reading something is very limited. And unfortunately, the world we live in, it's all about how the story is being told to me. So journalism, yes, it remains the science of factual reporting, but it's increasingly become the art of storytelling. And it's always been that way. Again, this is not something new, but it has become the art of storytelling. So we need to find new and creative ways of communicating the right story in a way that people would want to consume it, and actually let that take its course in settling into people's information systems worldwide. Those are the remarks I wanted to make to start with.
Thank you so much, Sanam Arora, for your views, opinions, and remarks, and the suggestions, so that we keep learning something new every day and make a better journalist in the field of journalism. Like truth, it takes time, but truth always is the victory, right? So next, I will invite President of Wall Street News Agency, Jiao Ming, for your remarks. President of Wall Street News Agency, Yao Ming.
Yes, did you hear me?
Yes, now.
Oh, good. Hello, everybody. I'm very glad to attend this Zoom conference by Samalas Jima.
Go ahead, yeah.
It's very difficult to pronounce your beautiful name. I will learn later from you.
Okay.
And everybody, in this special period after the breakout of these coronaviruses, we are suffering a lot, especially we cannot meet face by face. We cannot eat in a restaurant like last time you did invite. But it's very fortunate that we can hold this meeting through this Zoom conference. We can meet eventually through this video face by face. This is a long time we couldn't do it. So I hope everybody stay safe and be healthy, stay healthy and stay safe. Life is more important than money, than anything else, than fame. So take this opportunity. I wish all of you, especially these top leaders from your KP Foundation, is right?
GP Koirala Foundation.
GP or KP?
GP Koirala Foundation. Yeah.
Okay. Also, very difficult for me to pronounce, but I will learn it later from you. And we are older friends, taken from the past. We haven't, after the establishment of our Wall Street News Agency, and we met several times, and very happy to be invited to attend several meetings of youth held before the coronavirus break out. And especially you give me the special gift, a patch, a hat. I take it in my office.
And what is your take on technology in journalism?
Yes, and also I'm very happy. I sent my newspapers to you, and that day I went to your office for a visit, and I saw my newspapers there. Maybe it's a little pity that we only print in Chinese, but we did print some English newspapers, especially about United Nations meetings, that conference GUC 2020, blockchain and the digital currency, global the conference, and we did that, print that newspaper, and maybe I will print an English newspaper for you. Yeah, I hope today you could. I know you are recording. You send me the recording of our conference. Everybody is speaking, and I will put in my in my website. And actually, we have a better effect to do electronic newspaper than a paper, because every week or every 2 weeks we publish our newspapers, Wall Street News Agency. But these days, nobody dare to take out the newspaper in their hands and read it. And so we stopped paper printing during this pandemic period. But later on, we will restore. And again, thank you very, very much, Samir Jimia, for inviting me to here to attend this Zoom conference. And I'm very glad to meet a lot of beautiful ladies like Samala Aurora and this gentleman, Tara Casoni, and many others. Thank you very much. I wish
thank you, Jiao Ming, the president of
nice day. And again, I wish everybody of us and the whole mankind stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. You should have focused on technology in journalism. That was the topic to talk about today. So anyway, thank you for your well wishes and greetings. Thanks again. Now, I would like to acknowledge the prominent figures who just joined this global series. President of Province number 1, Nepal, from Nepal Trade Union Congress, Narayan Babu Karki, and Dharma Bhattarai from Transport Worker Union, and Bhagawati Kharka, President from Beautician Union, and also the invited central member of GPK Foundation, and Abhay Kumar Rai, journalist from Nepal. So next, I would like to invite Andrea Chen, the international journalist from Spain.
Thank you very much. And thanks again for having me. It's so enriching to listen such good perceptions and to be able to share views with all these intellectuals. I believe that it's so important that people of this high preeminency, like the Honorable Sujata Korala, cares about the freedom of expression. And I believe that today's journalist seeks to find a democratic and independent voice, but in many cases that is only the theory. The responsibility of a journalist or a media outlet is to transmit truthfulness in everything they broadcast. And in many ways, technologies have affected the distorting of information in the media, and not in a positive way, because they, of course, facilitate the spreading of fake news far more rapidly than in the past. But they also open the door to all sorts of interpretations and opinions, because nowadays anyone with a smartphone can become a journalist and a news promoter. But is it a bad thing that everyone can contribute with a different fraction of the story? Because I believe that journalism was born to bring the truth to the people, to tell what is really happening. And the current system is very individualistic, and they only tell a part of the story, the one that they are more interested in broadcasting. But what about the other half? The other half is what the people can tell. But as in everything, I believe that it's very needed to find a balance. Just as the past speaker talked about, at the end of the day, the absolute truth came out. And just like the Samana Aurora said, I love that she highlighted the importance of education. It's more important to learn how to Google than we think today. It's as important as learning math, because everybody thinks that Google is now the wisest source of information. And we absolutely believe 90% of what we read, when actually the only 50% of the content of the internet is truthful. Then, nevertheless, I do not see technology as a threat to global journalism. It will be considered as a threat if it tries to destroy journalism, but I think that the only intent is to transform it. In time, everything is transformed, and changes are needed in all areas. That does not mean that we should not be aware of the risk and how they may affect us. It all depends on the approach. For example, Twitter. Twitter has become something similar to a news agency, but being a totally open forum. Young people prefer to consult the news on social media rather than on the platforms that many consider outdated, like on the TV or on press. So people see this as a negative thing, because now we are all very vulnerable to believe fake news. Because for many people, just because it's published on the internet and has been widely shared, they think that it must be truth. But however, people are becoming more aware of this fact. They are becoming aware of this vulnerability. And this is generating more critical thinking that is absolutely necessary to develop more the rational sense of logic in us. So it's actually good for the people to start being critical on everything they are consuming. Now, thanks to the technology, if I live in a very small village in Spain, I can find out what is happening in a small village in Nepal or in Syria, which I will most likely never hear about in my local press. Now, in that sense, technology can bring us much more closer together and involve us in all kinds of events that we will otherwise consider irrelevant or we will simply ignore. Technology is only a tool. Ethics, though, does not depend on technology, but on the human use of technology. And its effects will not be other than the consequences of how we choose to use it. Technologies are only a part of what the development of society implies. And what is really important is where we direct the focus of the progress, to move on and take a step forwards and not backwards. Journalism needs to be reborn in neutrality and transparency. And in the new post-COVID world, we can find the perfect opportunity to start again and create something towards peace. I think it is better to see the half full glass and decide what content, how we're gonna fill it, with which content. So to finish, I will just say that we should invite people to question everything. So as journalists, we should promote critical thinking in this new era of technology. And for the journalists themselves, they should be more spreading sensibility and awareness on what content they are writing. Just now, journalism, it's also about storytelling, as Aurora said. So that's very important, and that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for listening to me, and let me share this panel with you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea Wen. She's an international journalist, like I already introduced her, and she is from Spain. And we will get back to you in Q&A session once our audiences have some questions to ask you. Thank you. Now, moving forward, I will invite Fardous Askar, prominent Jordanian journalist. Please welcome Fardous Askar. Please unmute your phone. Please unmute.
Fardous had some real technical problems the last time because of where she was. I'm just wondering if that's still happening now.
Okay. Fardous Askar, please unmute your phone. Or we get back to you later. Oh, okay, good. All right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry because now I'm in Georgia. Before I was in South Carolina, and the internet everywhere is different. Anyhow, thank you to having me, and I'm so sorry to let you maybe 2 minutes. Sir, I'm very happy to talk about the technology and journalism these days because I'm from the middle generation in journalism, and in that time the technology, it's big difference between now and before. What's happening now about COVID-19 is proof that the technology is very dangerous in journalism now. It's very dangerous in some kind of articles. Before that, we work hard to get the right and the truth news, and we running everywhere to catch the good news, the good story for the readers. Now we find it so easy, but this, the easier and the faster, there is many dangerous. It's the ethics, it changed the ethics, but it's more effectively. It's mean, the ethics is the same. And I'm very proud that the new generation in journalism, they have good ethics and working in the same line. Not all of them, but they are very proud of themselves because they get the fact very fast, and the news they collect very fast, and the media everywhere, they can catch many stories in the same minute. But in the same minute, if you read the story from different resource, you will find that the technology, it's make it change and very dangerous. Now, this is a good example about COVID-19. Sometimes we read about this medication, treatment in this country, in that country, but if you research about all these news, you will find the political things, it's move all these around us. I will not mention any country or how it's big story, maybe bigger than what I think. This is the dangerous, I mean, from the new technology. The technology is very, very good for us, but if we comparing, we find that dangerous and unhonest and many things. It's not clear. Technology and journalism during crisis and past COVID-19, it's very convenient. We haven't in this time any kind of the new technology. I can believe it. Every minute, if you go for Facebook, if you go for CNN, if you go for Fox News, if you research very sensitive, you can find where is the wrong and how we can give the readers good news and good ability. During this new technology, I wish to not take it seriously because it's very dangerous now, especially in my country or in the Middle East or in Nepal or Indonesia or anywhere, because the people haven't time to read. They just click Facebook news, breaking news, the picture. Every minute they see the war everywhere. The journalists in the war, they couldn't move now because the bombing everywhere, the killing everywhere. I would like to ask all my friends now, my colleague, how we can use the new technology in these days by all these wars around us. It's the war for technology, journalism around the world. How we can use it, how we can move it for ourselves to serve all these people from hunger, from uneducated, from death, from everywhere. I'm very happy to make my voice loud today with this small group, but more effective. This is what I believe. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all my colleagues, with all my respect for you and my president and the prime minister and everywhere. Wish you having a very good day. Thank you.
Thank you, Fardous Askar for your valuable suggestions and your concerns. So once we have questions by our viewers, we'll get back to you again. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Now I would like to acknowledge Morong President of Nepal Trade Union, Sushil Koirala, then National President of Nepal Trade Union Congress, Brother Pushkar Acharya. Next, I would like to invite Priyanka Sharma, Senior Correspondent and Gujarat Bureau Chief of Republic TV. Priyanka Sharma. Please, yes.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. It's really great to be a panelist among all of these esteemed people on the dais and sharing the dais with them. And a lot of interesting conversations that have really already transpired with all these people who have spoken about the advancement of technology and how technology is probably also something that is proving to be a peril in these dangerous times that Honorable Deputy PM Sujata Koirala had also said, and former Deputy PM Minister. So she had also said that how journalism can be affected by the advancement in technology, and also the kind of situation that
sorry to disturb you. Your microphone is Can you check your microphone? It's not like irritating noise.
Am I audible
now? Check your microphone. The wire or something is loose or something like it's cracking the voice. Can you check your microphone?
It's breaking. Breaking the voice. Yeah.
Can you check your microphone?
Is it audible now?
No.
Yet.
There are some
it's
issues.
Not very clear, Priyanka.
Okay, let me just fix that. I'm saying there's a lot of crackling in the voice.
It sounds like the lead. It sounds like the lead input that's causing the problem. It's that kind of sound.
Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, it's a little better. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
All right. I'll try my best to fix that as we speak. New ways of doing these webinars. We're still learning, I guess. So what I was saying that as other panelists have also already.
Priyanka is still cracking. You fix up the mic or you speak from your phone. Fix up the mic and otherwise speak from your phone, no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, better, far better. Thank you.
This is better, yeah.
Perfect,
better?
perfect.
Yeah, all right.
Yes.
All right. So, as I was saying, there are a lot of journalists on the panel as well, and all of them have expressed this opinion that these are dangerous times that we're living in, and that the role of technology is evolving as we go. And this is, I think somebody said something very interesting. This is a virgin territory. And I agree with that completely, because all of us are in this situation for the first time. We don't quite completely comprehend as to how to deal with this particular situation at hand, and also what the role of journalism will be as and when we go along and learn how to live with this new normal that has now come into place in our lives, in all of our collective lives, beyond geographical, political, and ideological borders, I must say. And very interestingly, even from the very beginning, we have been seeing that there has been an advancement in technology. There is an evolution of technology that we have seen as a species collectively. But now that we are looking at a pandemic, we're looking at a pandemic situation where we are forced to innovate. We are forced to look for a new way of doing things, specifically in journalism. So if I talk about that particular industry, there is a lot of things that have changed, and a lot of people did say that there are a lot of perils to the social media that has now come out. And I would just like to add to that, because we have evolved in terms of a species. We have had a technological revolution as well. But in this time of a pandemic, the social media is something that people have turned to. It has somehow democratized the entire way that the news industry functions. So, but with that also comes a level of perils that come with the social media as well. So when we look at that in particular, what it changes how a journalist will carry out their duty on the ground. There is a level of change that we see in the way that a reporter on the ground would now work as compared to what an anchor or a print journalist would do. So now, what I was also referring to earlier was that there's a TV industry has also evolved since I am a part of the TV industry in India. I'd like to speak about that in particular, that the evolution of the TV industry is also such as of now that the middleman has gone away. When when there are several journalists who raise the issue about the credibility of a news break, when we look at TV media, you are only showing what is the reality on the ground. There is no way that you could plagiarize that, or you could show it in a different way than what it actually exists to be. So when you go on the ground, there is no other way than to show the ground reality of the situation. So I think somebody posed a very nice question that what is the solution to using this technology responsibly? I would like to add to that. It is to cross-check each and everything that is catered to you as news, but also rely on audiovisual mediums and specifically on ground reports that reporters submit to you on either TV channels or on social media. And so that is something that the reporters really add in terms of looking at the news industry in the current times. So when we look at the perils of social media, I think somebody else also said very interesting that the way we don't know how to consume information as of now. So I guess the way to consume this information will also be to be conscious about the quality of the news break that you're consuming. So you also look at ground reports. For example, if I could talk about anecdotal evidences that I could submit in the form of the experience that I've had as a journalist on the ground during the time of a pandemic, when walking the streets was also like walking a ghost town, because there was absolutely nobody outside. You were the only one who was trying to take information from limited resources, because we were not allowed to roam around too much. It was also very dangerous to go to meet a lot of people. So even in that time, it is also the job of the reporter or the journalist who's on the ground to take information which will prove to be useful and also credible at the same time for the consumers. Because I think there was a lot of discussion about the consumers of news, and how they are to be trained as to how they're supposed to be consuming one particular news piece. So when you look at that, and when I talking about that experience of mine as well, that when you're out on the streets during the time of a pandemic, there are a lot of things that go wrong. So even if today we sit here talking to people from different countries, none of us are sitting in the same country, I think. And all of us are conversing about things that are very common to all of us in all of our societies during the time of a pandemic. But even now, the job of somebody to be on the ground is even more essential. So there might be a level of technological evolution, technological advancement, but the importance or the credibility that the ground report brings, that the ground report is brought to you by a journalist, will always be something that will be even more credible than what you would consume on social media per se. So I think that is something that cannot be taken away from the field of journalism. Yes, there are a lot of people who did talk about artificial intelligence, and there is a perennial paranoia of the collective human conscience that artificial intelligence is going to take over our jobs. And there is a level of truth to that as well, because there is a level of technological advancement, because of it there is a lot of job cuts, and even in our media industry we are seeing that a lot of journalists are losing their jobs. But I would go to an extent where I would say that the people who call this a human error is actually a human element with which the news has to be catered to the consumers, the viewers, the masses in general. So I think the level of artificial intelligence that we're talking about, it cannot ever completely replace a journalist, or it cannot completely replace the human element with which a journalist is going to bring you the news. So that being said, of course, there is a lot of debate about how we're going to look at journalism in the coming few years and how it's going to evolve in the space of a pandemic, of a global pandemic. But one takeaway for me would be perhaps that the ground reports, the work that a journalist puts into going to the ground, taking information, putting it all together, and then catering it to the viewers, that is something that cannot be ever considered inferior to what you would probably consume on social media. And also, yes, we have always talked about social media in a lot of negative sense of the medium as well. But in today's time, I think it is even more important to understand the perils of social media. Because this crowdsourcing of information that a lot of channels and newspapers adhere to, there is a level of they don't completely always get to cross check everything, and they're in a hurry to actually break the news, as a lot of journalists would be able to empathize with me when I say this, because we all face the same pressure of a news break. So that, I think, that checking has to be done. There has to be a level of checking on the facts that we get from the ground, and also before giving a checking that has to be done. And of course, it is rightfully pointed out. And because I have been saying that it's the democratization of the news industry, there is a level of independence that all news portals and online, self-acclaimed journalists also have on social media. But at the same time, there has to be some kind of conscious, there has to be a conscious choice that the consumers or the readers or even the journalists will have to make in order to see the source that they are consuming this particular news break from. So, of course, because the topic is also about the ethic and ethics, the ethics, I think, come into play here when we put the responsibility of cross-checking facts on the journalist. And of course, the effects are going to be subsequently visible as and when we learn to live with this new normal of a pandemic. And how the news industry is going to evolve into a better stage and a newer stage where journalists will be given more importance to be out there on the ground and bringing the reports to the news, to the consumers and the viewers.
Thank you so much, Priyanka Sharma-ji, for your valuable inputs, as you are the real ground-breaking, news-breaking journalist. And nice to hear your experiences, and we hope we can learn and work together in post-COVID-19 in the new world. And always welcome for your suggestions and ideas how to make this better ahead. Next, now let's just break up in the panel of journalist speakers and move out to the politicians' view on technology in journalism. Let's please welcome Dr. Askar Koirala, Central Working Committee member of Nepali Congress and the influential leader of Nepal, Dr. Askar Koirala.
Thank you, Somnathji. Chairperson of this talk, Technology in Journalism, Sujata Koirala-ji, and the expert panelist. I'm a medical doctor. I have no knowledge about journalism as such. But what I am seeing these days is, because of the populism all over the world, journalism is also becoming more populist. This is a layman's view. Regarding the post-new world of post-COVID-19, COVID-19 has invaded the life of people in the globe, and media cannot stay far from it. To save and strengthen journalism, media owners are compelled to choose very few options, out of which just a second. To save and strengthen journalism, media owners are compelled to choose very few options out of some possibilities. Consequently, traditional print media is in the process of collapsing. considered as the strong pillars of democracy at least for 2 centuries, journalism is now under threat. Even though the print media play an imperative role in the society and has become only one source to rural communities in many nations in the absence of internet access, the trend is slowly changing. The data shows that about 50% circulations for newspapers has already been declined, and the rest is in the process. Media house running print versions is under immense trend too. The media house is highly affected of this pandemic with the loss of advertising revenues and less sales. Most of the media houses has already announced staff layoffs and canceled their print operations and has downsized significantly. The print media has been declining in recent years due to the uptake of digital news in our context. Unless we take swift and decisive measures, the industry will be undoubtedly decimated. The pandemic has added fuel to the fire in it. Nobody can gainsay the fact that democracy cannot function without having systemic journalism, for which it should play the role of watchdog. It is therefore the mushrooming online portals in these days should be systematized. Efforts to save journalism is applauded. However, governments should scrutinize them too. And this is also true that in Nepal, media house should make the transition from print to online media to sustain during COVID-19, for which media owners must be practical innovations and creativity to build a strong online presence is a need of today. As Nepal is still struggling with broadband penetration and expensive and data and electricity costs, it is a foremost priority to have access of internet with secured and archive online. Media house should be supported to continue informing to the people, for the people, by the people, and even in the current situation for which government should intervene to the struggling media house during post-COVID-19. Nepal government should be equally responsible to make media house sustain in this difficult situation to migrate from print media to online platform, as media plays the role of watchdog. Several media workers will definitely lose their jobs. In the meantime, if nothing significant will be done in the next few months from the government side, sustaining digital media and to ensure their role to navigate through this dire time, governments, politicians, and those in power should not be left unscrutinized. In response to COVID-19 in particular, Google launched the Journalism Emergency Relief Fund, while Facebook established the COVID-19 Local News Relief Fund to help newsroom maintain operations during the pandemic. Their recent programs like the Google News Initiative and the Facebook Journalism Project that support online media and equality journalism train newsrooms and combat disinformation. Nepal government should also impose tax on big tech to support and strengthen independent online media. Since journalism is not safe and can be kept and remove the content as per wish, it is clear that even if there is a problem in it, the effect will not change. As the number of smartphone users has increased in Nepal too, its importance and impact seems to be increasing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sekar Koirala, for your valuable remarks on technology in journalism. As you said, you are a medical doctor, not familiar on the issue on the journalism, but we have learned, you got the data from Nepal. Thank you again. Now, I'd love to invite Julie Dennis, musician and project coordinator from London, United Kingdom. Julie Dennis.
Hi, sorry, I couldn't find my mute, on mute. Hello, I'm Julie, hi. It's really interesting because I started thinking I knew what I was going to talk about, but there's so much to react to. And one of the things about Zoom is it's so hard to have that lively debate, you know what I mean? That sort of reaction to a certain point. And so I may sound a little bit disjointed, but I'm going to try and come back to the things that come up for me. My orientation is, the reason I thought it was quite funny when George Michael was at the front, because it's like one person I've worked with, and somehow people seem to pick up on that. I think because they love George so much. It's like, hello. So George is always in context, but it's quite interesting. Sorry?
One of my favorite artists, George Michael.
Well, exactly, that's what I mean. I think as George takes over, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, during my high school, I used to listen to his songs.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. He was amazing working with him. But interestingly, I'm a musician first and foremost, and a composer. And I graduated in psychology at York University, and I've got a master's in music and composition from the Guildhall. So that's my qualification for being involved in research in the music industry and the psychology of the music industry. And so for quite some time now, I've been working on, you know, how to find more effective interventions for creatives in terms of their mental health. And one of the things I often say is that we've had a bit of a pre-run on the sort of things that are happening to people in terms of their mental health now in the context of the COVID virus. But yeah, so but we're talking today about journalism, and I was but first of all, I would like to talk first of all about technology generally, because one of the things that happened when first technology sort of came into the music business was that everybody started digitizing their music libraries, and everything was digital, and getting rid of all their CDs, getting rid of their vinyl, not having anything in the real world to touch. And there was quite quickly a backlash against that, because we're talking about quickly, we've got to invest in, you know, getting the technology there so that people can receive the technological information. But actually, I think there's a really good argument for just taking a step back and saying, do we need to find ourselves utterly dependent upon the technology, the electricity? Do we need to be utterly dependent on that as we move in this environment to not touching each other, not speaking to each other except through this? And that's what's causing the mental health crisis right across the board with everyone. Whereas there was groups that we used to think those groups are more vulnerable to mental health. Everybody is suffering from the mental health impact of the isolation, the lack of certainty, everything that we're all suffering from here and now, I'm absolutely sure. But one of the things about what we have to do is quickly get on to getting the technology to these places where they've got no technology, get the investment in there. I would really suggest that we take a step back and say, okay, let's think about that, but let's also reinvest in securing that which we have created already. There's also the thing about customer use. You know, when people said, I just want to touch a piece of vinyl. I just want to put my vinyl on, and I want to put my record on, and I want to take the inner sleeve of my CD. I want to read it. I want to have it as something that makes me connected to the artists that I love. And I love reading the broadsheets. I love reading that. I can't be asked reading the news on my computer because I get exhausted. It's the same as if I do more than 3 Zoom calls in a day. I'm going up the wall. I don't want to look at people on a screen all the time. Sometimes I want to read Pride and Prejudice in a book. You know what I mean? And I think it's the same with journalism. Somebody's written something 30 years ago and it's still there in written print. There's nothing better than seeing that context there. Nothing's happened to it. It hasn't been delivered to me by another context. You know, so I just wanted to say that about technology and us being so quick to embrace it is okay, but let's not leave behind the baby with the bathwater. Do you know what I mean? Throw another baby with the bathwater bit, I think, sometimes. And I just wanted to come into technology in general, because for me, when I'm talking about journalism, music business press, really, or entertainment press, and I want to talk about context. When we talk about, people just have to be, truthful, and it's truthful if it's on the ground. Well, the truth is always in context, always in the context of the person. It's in the context of who they're gathering the news for, and it's in the context of the agenda of the people they're gathering the news for. And it's particularly, you know, we talk about journalism as if it's one thing, you know, it's not one entity. It's lots of different entities, like there's investigative journalism or scientific journalism, and the music business journalism is not about finding truth and getting to the hard-hitting facts. It's about selling records. Their agenda is the music business, making sure they increase profits of the better-known artists, getting their buzz going. And it's the same as what's created a problem inside the industry for people who don't want to do that with the industry. I recently went right under the radar because I'd been very unwell myself, and I was applying for something, and unless they could see my online presence, it was almost like they were saying I was irrelevant. You know, I'm cracking on, as they say in Liverpool. I'm getting older, you know, and like where my daughter will be, she'd probably write 3 albums in a week on an iPhone. Do you know what I mean? But I'm still we've got a foot in both worlds and a place in none in some ways. But this utter dependency in your identity inside the technology, which is totally driven by somebody else's agenda, somebody's idea of truth, somebody's idea of what it is they want to achieve by giving you the information. We can't just separate it. So as long as we've got people on the ground and they're telling the truth, how do we know they're telling the truth? Who do we know they're telling the truth for? Do you know what I mean? We don't know that. And it's about how we receive information as much as how we produce it. And it's as much about us as journalists saying, I want to be sure that people receive the information I give them in the way that it was intended. And I want to be sure that the integrity I have is declared and clear so that the people can begin to be directed towards truth. Because you really can't, with all the misinformation and disinformation that the first journalist was talking about, I can't remember her name, sorry. She was talking about this problem of trying to separate out, filter out, having filter bubbles. It's not just that like we might think about that because we have a different orientation, because we're used to writing, looking for the evidence and qualifying ourselves. But you can't decide that everybody's going to suddenly educate themselves and become skilled in that. Do you know what I mean? And I'll take it back to now to my orientation, which is in mental health and the music industry, and doctors and scientists, because recently we've been really affected by the reports on, we were just coming back to doing live music, and I've been working a lot on trying to make live music safe here. And the science has been very dubious. A couple of comments were made by a few scientists about aerosol and choirs. It was basically information taken out of context, and the government had a knee-jerk reaction, and that reaction drove policy. And where the industry was desperate to get back into work, people had invested in, you know, events and said, great, we're going to get back. They just shut everyone down. Now, when they shut everyone down, it stops people want to invest in live music, and it also profoundly affects the mental health of the people who thought they were just about starting to get back to work. And it happened because of bad science. Now, I think if you go back to the Industrial Revolution, actually, and talk about the technicalization, technology isn't about now. It started then. You know, it started when they technicalized mental health and gave the responsibility to doctors instead of the community. When they technicalized physical health and made us have to go to experts to understand immunology. You know, it's not rocket science, immunology. It's not that hard. People don't have to be that bright. But we've been convinced as a society that we have to be clever and we have to go to the scientists because only they can understand our bodies, only they can understand our mental health. But actually, communities are very good at looking after each other's mental health, and always were before. And actually, scientists are proving to be very, very bad at it. You know, so when we talk about technology as a whole thing and journalism as a whole thing, we are so bludgeoned by context and agenda. And I think we really need to step back and really almost that sort of sense of really taking our time to meditate on what this is. It's not, oh, that's a solution. Let's find more technology. Let's invest more in technology. We just need more information. We don't. We sort of need less information. We need information to come from one-to-one sources, trusted sources. And that's, I'm not saying it's an easy, I'm not saying, and therefore I've fixed everything. I'm just saying, let's be realistic. We can say this until we're blue in the face. We can talk a lot and say nothing. it doesn't matter unless we understand exactly how it's delivered, that information, and that people understand the integrity of that delivery, then we might as well sit at home and twiddle our thumbs as journalists. It's pointless. That knee-jerk reaction from the government in the UK has single-handedly, profoundly affected the mental health of millions of people in this country in a 2-week period. The suicide rate went up in that time. Basically in the music industry, the psychological crisis and suicide is 3 times more there than in other similar industries, because there are all these certain factors which are the same, which impact musicians differently. And so musicians had to then, even though the science was already there about aerosol and immunology and how infectious aerosol was, because of this knee-jerk reaction, we had to go back as an industry and do the science again. And then the science has come back only yesterday saying, actually, that was a bad call, because it's no different than talking. You can still work outside and it's perfectly safe. And I've been trying to set up something called a 0R event license, where we can say we can guarantee we've got 0R when we're here, and unless we can, it's not going on. And I think it's about journalism and us saying, taking back control, not saying, oh, this is the information, and then waiting for the government to make policy. Let's say, no, that's not okay. You can't make policy on bad science. We as journalists are going to say to you, no, not good enough, because you're impacting things wrongly, and we're going to show you the evidence. We're going to collect the evidence from the scientists that know, and we're going to put it in front of you, so that policy is not driven by fear. When governments are doing it by fear, then it's our responsibility to make sure that we get ahead of the story all of the time.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, so
lawyers are like, music business lawyers aren't about that. They're not about what you guys are about. But yeah, I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get back to you second session for if there are any questions to be asked by you. Thank you for your remarks. Now we are running out of the time. The next I will invite Gopal Barali, Chief Editor of Nissan News, and he is the central member of Nepal's Journalists Union, and also the Vice President of National Dalit Journalists Association of Nepal. Gopal Barali.
Thank you, Dai. Chairman of the program, Honorable Shekhar Koirala, Sujata Koirala, senior journalist from different countries. First of all, I would like First of all, I would like to thanks to organize GP Koirala Foundation USA President Somnath Muligatai for giving me opportunity to speak at this event. While the world has been hit by the corona epidemic, 31,935 initiative. While the world has been hit by the corona epidemic, it has also affected Nepal. There are
Looks like he got lost on the internet. Next is Gopal Bareli. Are you there? I don't see him. No. Okay. So as he's joining back, so I will acknowledge our GP Koirala Foundation America Central member, Bigyan Khanal is here. Bigyan Khanal is here, Central member of GPK Foundation America. Now, I'd like to invite Dr. Pratishta Singh for her remarks. Dr. Pratishta Singh. Dr. Pratishta Singh. I don't see her either. Next, as we will be joining back, I believe. Next, I would like to invite as a speaker, final panelist of this session, Himanshu Vyasji, Secretary, All India Central Committee, All India Congress National Committee, Secretary of All India Congress National Committee, Himanshu Vyasji. Unmute, please.
Thank you, Somnath ji. And it is very nice meeting to all of participants from all over the world. It is a great pleasure for me to join you in this conference. Basically, we were talking about the social media misuse and fake news. From that, it has come that we must do something like this, and you accepted. And you decided that we will do this definitely. And some of my friends have joined this,
right?
And they've given their views very well. And basically, fake news, I'm going to talk more on that. Because in politics, I face and we face a lot of fake news problem, in particularly in social media. Because these days, other medias are mainly owned by the business groups, and they are very much suppressed by the ruling party. So mostly they have become the mouthpiece of government, ruling party, always. Social media is one of the instruments where people can give their views independently. But in that also, they have entered heavily. Like recently, there was an article in Wall Street Journal about the Facebook in India playing a major role in the elections by the ruling party. They have taken over the whole thing. And fake news is one of the main issues going on, because fake news spreads faster than fact. Misinformation or disinformation in digital media, there is no editing in it, because anybody can put anything. Previously, Facebook and Twitter, they were not removing this type of information. But these days, I think Facebook and Twitter, they are monitoring, and they have started editing and removing fake news and hate speeches and the write-up which can create problem in the society. WhatsApp is also once again a big thing, because there are 400 million WhatsApp users in India, and every month 2 million WhatsApp groups they are deleting because of this fake news problem. We have to basically take the responsibility of our own write-up, because we are just seeing and forwarding. So there is no credibility sometimes. So neutrally, we have to think what we are writing, what we have to write, because everything is going in the society and it will react. So some countries like China, they are not allowing international Facebook and other things because they have their own thing. So now countries are working on it, then they have to create such platform that where their people can control all that, not the international forces. Basically, social media used in journalism or anybody in common masses, it is an instrument for the developmental activities like public problem, public grievances. It can be easily reached to the authorities. A small municipality, if the people are very active in WhatsApp, they can create a group and always go to the authorities to solve their problem. So we have forgot journalism. We have think that social media, we thought that there is a breaking news always, there is some sensational news, but we are not thinking on the line of development. Gandhiji was also a writer, editor, publisher during the freedom movement. But that he is working for the freedom movement and public welfare. So they will not allow advertisement even in their newspaper in those days. In those days, there was no internet also available. But Gandhiji's newspapers were so popular in those days because it was a public interest thing in that. But we have completely forgotten that part, Somnathji. I must take note of suggestion from Sanam. She has told that there should be a fund for independent news groups because most of the channels and newspapers are owned by businessmen today. So there is no neutralism. And sometimes media has become like a courts. They are running the trials. So media trials, sometimes innocent people die. You know, these are the issues we are facing these days. I must say, Gandhiji was always telling, when a newspaper is a mean of making profit, serious malpractices are likely. So, motto of the journalism, motto of the social media is basically to help people, help public in their own routine life also. Thank you very much, Somnathji, because I will not take much time. There are many other speakers, and you have to ask questions to our panelists also.
Right. Thank
because
you.
You told me that I must speak, so I have spoken. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Himanshu Vyasi. Thank you. Thank you for your great support, help, and initiation that guide me through to make this program happen today. Thanks again.
Thank you, sir.
Before Gopal Baraili is just joined, but before he speaks, Ashish Ray has to leave for another event. There is one question for him from one of our viewers. So if Ashish Ray is still on, I would love to ask that questions from one of our viewers.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. One of our viewers says, you are the most journalist that I see today in the program. And by your experiences as a in journalism, in the field of journalism, what would you see as a perspective post-COVID-19 or the new world about fearless, favorless, and bribeless journalists?
Well, I think journalism, news media in general, were already in a very difficult space before COVID took place. Some of the points have been mentioned by others. Ownership, collusion with government, a lack of clarity, lack of impartiality, and not following the ethics and principles of journalism, which, as I emphasized earlier, has got to be the truth. A newspaper may have an opinion of its own. That opinion may be supportive of a government, but on the news pages, distortion is unacceptable. So I think the problem that existed still exists and will continue to exist till, I think, governments worldwide get together to find a solution for a new information order, because the international information order, which has existed now for decades, is really rotting at the edges. And therefore, you have to find a way out of this. It's not going to be easy because there are vested interests in controlling media. And so therefore, to come out of it will be difficult. What COVID has done, it has had a devastating effect on media because revenue has dried up. And that's where I think news media have to reinvent themselves, because the print circulation, which used to be the bread and butter of news media, is unlikely to increase rapidly. In developing countries where literacy is going up, it may still increase, but the pace of increase will slow down, and more people will gather their news from their handsets, and that is the future. So therefore, I think a subscription model, rather than asking for donations, in this country where I live, the United Kingdom, The Guardian is a premier, a caring newspaper, but it does not charge for its news content. What it does is that it appeals to people to donate to them. And this is a voluntary rather than compulsory situation. And I don't think this voluntary model is working, because The Guardian is losing money. It is laying off journalists. And that, I think, is something which is a phenomenon happening all over the world, because journalists are losing their jobs because news media are unable to sustain themselves. I think the days of 24-hour news channels on television are coming to an end. I worked for the pioneering organization in this genre, which is CNN and CNN International. But I think the days of such models are coming to an end, because people are getting news on their mobile phones instantly. And therefore, the value of breaking news on a TV channel, which is running news 24 hours, is not as valuable as it used to be. There are one other point which I'd like to make, which is this as a conclusion. Two, if I may. Social media is not news media. Social media is social media. It does carry information, but equally it carries disinformation. And that's an area, again, to address for authorities all over the world, because we are reaching a situation where disinformation is overwhelming correct information. And there again, unless there's a coming together of political parties in countries, coming together of governments on an international platform like the United Nations, I don't think it's going to happen. Finally, the worst cases of COVID have been in countries who fall into one or more of these categories. One, where governments have been in denial. Two, where a government has been disorganized. And three, where a government has been unscientific in its approach. And you look at that, you look at the United States of America, you look at Brazil, you look at Mexico, you look at the United Kingdom, which is the worst case in Europe, and you look at India. You will find that in these countries, the governments concerned fall into one or more of these three categories. So those are my final words. Thank you very much for having me. I hope we meet again and continue this discussion.
Thank you so much, Ashish Ray, for your valuable input and your valuable time on this 9th Global Zoom virtual conference of GPK Foundation America. And we look forward to working with you closely. Thank you. Thank you again.
Somnath ji, Pratishta, mostly she has joined again, Pratishta.
Okay,
Check
so
if she's there.
Okay, let's see. Yes, she's here. Let us welcome Pratishta Singh, Dr. Pratishta Singh, for her remarks on this panel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wow, the discussion has been so engaging and so interesting so far. I had a few phone calls and so a few lapses, but I agreed with most of what most of the speakers said. I just want to say a few things about it, about journalism, and especially in today's day and age, taking on from what Madam Koirala said, and I completely agree that we rely on our iPhones and on our smartphones so much today, because not because they are with us all the time, but because actually the smartphone brings a sense of democracy to knowledge, to information. Because what happens is that the same knowledge which I have or anybody else has is circulated amongst everyone who has a smartphone. So it democratizes information. And therefore, I think it's a great tool. But the problem with democracy and journalism, I think, is the chicken and the egg situation. Because obviously you need great journalism to support a fantastic democracy, but at the same time, I think a good open-hearted journalism shows what kind of a democracy you are living in. So it works both ways. It's a circle that goes around, and therefore I feel in COVID times especially, although fake news and all sorts of news have been circulating across the world, even before, much before all of this, and there are new scandals with Facebook and other media all the time. But I think the exciting thing right now is this explosion of information which is everywhere. And therefore I think that what Sanam said makes a lot of sense, that we should know how to pick and choose. We should know how to analyze the news that we are being subjected to. So I am a big supporter for journalism of all kinds. I think democracy should allow all sorts of journalism, but at the same time, it should allow people to check the facts. There should be so common personally. I work a lot with rural parts of the world because I had a self in an organized sector, especially who work in rural areas. I feel that for them to access knowledge, imagine a village which gets one newspaper, every day. For them to, a lot of those houses to have smartphones is a great sense of power, even though I agree that they get a lot of fake news. They are subjected to a lot of WhatsApp, untrue stories, etc. But the fact that it opens up the world for them, I think that itself is a huge deal. Of course, it will have to be checked. Of course, it will have to be controlled. Of course, it will have to be regulated in some manner. But I feel that in COVID times, especially, I feel that today, if the world can say that we are in a better space, that things are getting better, that things are slowly improving, we can say that because of the power of information. Because in 1918, we did not have that. Today, the whole world knows that we're supposed to wear a mask, that we're supposed to have our gloves on, etc., etc. That, and what's going on, everybody knows. People in the remotest part of the world know that something like this is going on, and they try to take care and they try to take the necessary precautions. Therefore, I really appreciate this explosion of information, especially for people who are in far-flung areas, in rural areas, in areas where there is less connectivity. But of course, there's a need for regulation. And I'm really happy to be a part of this panel and to be able to speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pratishta Singh ji. She's also the doctorate in Italian languages. She can well, right? And former professor at Delhi University. Thanks again for sharing your views. Now that ends the discussion of our panelists. Now we are moving into the second session of QA, and I have few questions to ask in respective panel that I received from the viewers, which are online already, live on Facebook and other social media. Now this question goes to Fardous Askar. How dangerous and what is the situation right now to cover the tech journalism, like you said, in Middle East? Please unmute, please unmute. Please unmute your.
Hello, my question is to Priyanka. How do we expect? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, my question is to Priyanka. Namaste, Priyanka.
I'm here.
Yeah, my question is to you is how do you expect the customers to be made aware of the right source of news? Like,
here,
you know,
sir.
that like that. Yeah. Hello.
Okay, so that goes after this. So can you answer this question for this Askar, a prominent
Yeah.
Jordanian journalist?
Yes.
After
It's good. It's good question for me. There is no protection now for any journalist. Looks like in Syria, like now in Beirut, like, because it's not because of the war, because something personality between these parties and these parties, there is no real democracy in journalism in the Middle East, really. I was in country under the military for 25 years. When we were being write any political things about the prime minister, about the king, about the queen, about the military, they take us for court to ask us. And after the democracy, all of the people, all the kings, all the prime minister, the governments, everything, they said, we have a freedom till the sky. Where is it now? Where is it, the freedom? They said, you have a technology, you have good news, it's come to you by a minute around the world, but I couldn't use it. Till now in democracy, it's very few and less freedom for the journalists in the Middle East. I think now it's around the world. Look for United States freedom and big freedom, and by minute, they will cancel your Facebook, your Twitter, your blah, 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 blah. This is big problem for the journalists around the world and especially on the Middle East. There is no protection. We lost a lot of our colleagues in Syria and Iraq and everywhere. The power, the money power, it's the king of the war and the kingdom of any journalism association. What I can talk about this more than this? If you feel that United Nations just make umbrella of protection for her journalists around the world, yes, I respect this association and foundation to protect us. When they called me to go for Iraq under the pumping and killing, and I went, we were being 3 women from the Middle East covering all these in Iraq. And even that, we couldn't move from the house of the student at that time in Baghdad to go out and see what's happening, what I shall write, what I will tell my people, what I tell, what's happening for the women, for the children, for. No, sir, there is no protection these days for the journalists around the world. And I'm so sorry for how many journalists we lost. And God bless them, sold their soul. And I'm very happy today to ask me this question, because I have a lot in my mind to tell all my colleagues around the world, who's the journalist now? The journalist, if you mean, I'm very, very thankful and appreciate for our colleague now from the CNN, he was talk. The journalism, it's not Facebook and Twitter. And yes, sir, you are right. This is not a news. This is not a news agency or a news. No, it's a media. And I'm so sorry for the president, the big president around the world. He used it as a news. Twitter, Facebook, and they fighting. China, America, look what's happening. This is not journalists that I'm studying for 25 years in this. I'm so proud for you and my colleague again. And I think this is my answer for your question.
Thank you so much for this, Oscar. So what was the Snehil Desai's question to Priyanka Sharma?
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, my question is very much simple. Yeah, Priyanka, I would like to ask you, how do we expect the customers to be made aware of the right source of news? Like, because as we are talking about this fake news and all, so how, can you throw some light on the same thing?
All right, this goes to Priyanka Sharma. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks, Neil. That's a fantastic question, actually. So there's something called caveat emptor, which means buyers beware. And another thing, as we were talking about,
breaking up, you know, the voice. Yeah. It's breaking up.
Just 1 second.
Yeah.
So, as I was saying, it's a fantastic question, Snehal. There's something called caveat emptor, which is known as buyers beware. And, something that a lot of people did talk about, that there is a level of education that is required for the consumers. And as I have seen the educational, the syllabus that people really have, there is no mention of research methodology. It is only in colleges and universities that people are even introduced to a subject like that. I think this should be done at the school level, at a more primary level, so that people can actually comprehend and how they have to actually research upon whatever news piece that they might be consuming. I don't think so.
Thank you, Priyanka ji. Next, I have a question for Wall Street News Agency President Yu Jiang Min. Are you still there, Yu Jiang Min? Yes, I have a question for you from our viewers.
Did you hear me?
Yes. Okay, the question goes to you. What is the truthfulness of tech news, like technologies, news through technology, right now coming in during the crisis of COVID and right now from China?
Me.
What do you? Yeah.
Excuse me, I didn't catch you.
Okay. This is what the questions for you from one of our viewers. What is the truthfulness? That's the real fact, reality of the news that is coming from the technology side, like tech journalism. How reliability and how truthful is the news that is coming during the post-COVID-19 from China?
Yes. Yes. As you know that these days we are not the traditional news organizations only. We have self-media. So in this world, self-media, their technology, because of the development of this G4 and the G5, and even I read today G6, America is developing, and it's very convenient for people doing medium through Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Yeah, we can express and the news. Even as soon as it's happening, there's a big news in America, in Canada, in Asia, China, and in Nepal or in Europe, in Russia. Any place you will get a big news or even a small news. People doing it immediately. They just do it through I mean self media. Just like I use my cellular phone, I use the WeChat in Chinese, TikTok, the Chinese medium, and we direct broadcasting so people notice our meeting immediately. This is actually a news tool through our Wall Street News Agency or our Wall Street satellite television. So we are broadcasting very, very quickly. This actually, I didn't go through my editorial department. This is normal. If going to editorial department and our employees, our managers, editors are resting today, take a rest because it's a Sunday, right? And but it's very convenient for me sitting here in this conference room, traditionally crowded with people, but now since the modern technology of this Zoom technology, and we even could do it through during this continuation and outbreak and continuation of coronaviruses. But we still happily do it, and people all over the world are watching us through our Wall Street News Agency and through our Wall Street satellite television. But I'm doing through my iPhone,
So just the viewer, the viewer just asked you the question: what is the percentage of real facts or the truthfulness of the Chinese news that came out during COVID-19? So that's the main question.
This is a very good question and a difficult question for me because I was born from China. I immigrated to this country to be a citizen of USA, and China and the USA are fighting because in many fields, and it's very awkward for me to answer this question, but I should say something. The news, and I think Chinese take a quick step at the beginning of the outbreak of this coronaviruses happening in Wuhan City, Hubei Province, China. That's that means they closed the city, and on June 21st, 2020. You know what is that day? That is Chinese New Year's Day. Chinese took a different news day, and we get news from a lot from the newspaper, a lot from the television. That's later. But we have friends in Wuhan. They send this news to us very quickly, and at the beginning, people are at panic and not knowing what is happening, and some people even said, "I will die very soon," and really, some people died. Just this is just the same thing as we began in March 22nd. New York also sealed, and we stay at home orders, and we are very feel horrified, and the news spread very quickly, and some we saw, and that is truth. In China, in Wuhan, we eventually didn't see it, but most of the news and not by the Chinese television, not by the Chinese newspaper, but by the Chinese people in China, in Wuhan city, Hubei province, China. They reported something, yeah, I think that's very true, but later on, Chinese traditional medical herbs helped a lot. We have like licorice, like many Chinese traditional, many Chinese traditional medicine herbs, and prevent this. Just like 17 years ago, when that SARS happening in Guangzhou city, Guangdong province, later on outbreak in Beijing, Chinese took strict control and control the SARS very quickly, and just like they did this time, control these corona viruses. So on May the 28th, China's Wuhan city was reopening, and they just go back to normal, but they're repeating. These coronaviruses will not go away. They're repeating. And last month, they're repeating in Beijing. Then recently, I get some news they're repeating in the northern part of China, like Jilin province and Heilongjiang province, and neighboring Russia. And also in Xinjiang province, also neighboring Russia and many other countries. And so they repeating. In US, I see people around me is going back to normal, but we should be very much careful and still go back to the water at the beginning. I'm ending this, my answering this question. We should, everybody, we must stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Very good.
Next question goes to this. Arun Sundaria had one question. I would like Arunji, you should ask the question.
Hello.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yes.
You're audible.
Okay. My question is regarding the, making some independent fund for the media, where even the good organizations working in the private sector also gets that fund from there. The government should allocate some fund, and the media working in the private sector should also assess that fund. Without any bias, they must get it, unlike Prasar Bharati. Can it happen? The question is open to all the journalists.
Yeah, Priyanka, if you could answer this, or anyone else who could answer this.
Just about funding, wasn't it? Where we're going to get funding to have an independent
fund from the government.
Arun, I can tell you, because in the political system I know better. When Prasar Bharati also started like an independent thing, but it is never independent. So you don't expect any fund from the government to give to independent, because whatever government will decide is independent, and they will be always run by the government. Okay. So it should be private funding, what Sanam suggested. It should be a private funding people who are really interested to do some good work in the society and do something welfare of people, something neutrally they want to give to not without no biases and not capitalist, not 100% leftist, but in the center they think. I think they should come out with the fund and provide to the people, and there should be a judiciary who can check them that they are really doing good job. Then they can definitely fund. I think that is a government. You don't expect.
Yeah, I think it's quite, Himanshu is absolutely right. It's quite counterproductive to expect that governments will ensure independence. That's the whole point, is that a government funded platform will never be as independent as you'd like it to be. That in that case, it would become Chinese media, right? We don't want that. So I think the whole point is that if we encourage private donations from individuals all over the world and actually run very active philanthropic campaigns that can encourage the likes of Bill Gates, who's already doing a lot, but there are so many philanthropists in the world who often actually say, surprisingly, that they don't necessarily know how to utilize their money and put it to best goals. So there are international organizations. The International Fact-Checking Organization is a wonderful network, for instance, which refuses propagandist outlets when they apply to become fact checkers and get that certification. Those sorts of international conglomerates need to come together and create a sort of platform where private individuals, philanthropists, and corporations who have a good heart can contribute. And so government will never be the answer to that, unfortunately. But, having said that, there are, say what you may about the BBC, it does function relatively transparently and or at least in a sort of relatively unbiased fashion. And the BBC in the UK is funded by the taxpayer, isn't it? It's not funded by the government, it's funded by the taxpayer. You directly pay contribution that goes there. Of course, there will be influence there as well. But there are models that can be leveraged and used for this purpose.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think there has to be legislation.
I'm back now. So there's another question to be asked.
Can I just say one thing about that at the end there? I just think that the idea of legislation that forces government into providing funding for independent press is another thing. Do you know what I mean? If the effect of European law on the functionality of a government is quite incredible, and I think it pressurised for there to be a statutory obligation under law for the independent press to be funded by government. That's a very different thing than them voluntarily giving money. Or I think you have the same problem with voluntary organisations and philanthropists who are not biased, are not unbiased. I think you have the same problem as you would with government. Unless we have legislation which forces them to create regulation and regulation on themselves as well, I think we're on hiding to nothing. I just wanted to...
Okay, Priyanka ji, go ahead.
Again, voice is an issue.
Remove your earpod. Yeah. Yeah, speak.
Just I want to make a comment about donation, about the people nowadays, 10 years ago coming, they couldn't trust to pay any donation for any government, okay? They prefer to pay donation for the private sector more to pay for the government. We couldn't trust any government, especially what happened after COVID-19. I hope that my colleague understand me. This is the truth. Where is our money gone before when we push the government? Nothing at all. The very rich people, they have more and more and more extra rich and more money. And the poor, they dead and hunger. We couldn't trust as a private sector to push any government. This is, of course, it's my opinion, but it's up to you. But after all our discussion now, I believe myself that my opinion is right. You will not find, even the election in America, they waiting to take donation from the people to push this and that, democracy or republic. This is a biggest example about what I'm talking about. No private sector, no people will push any government. And I hope that. I hope that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, thank you. Before we have 15 minutes left for the session of today. And before we continue, I would like to acknowledge Mukunda Subadi, senior journalist, and he wants to speak for a minute. Please do so. Mukunda Subadi, senior journalist. 1 minute time for you. Unmute your phone.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cannot see you. Put your video on.
Oh, okay.
Just for 1 minute, okay? So we have to continue now. I have 3 more questions to address. And
Okay.
we have 15 more minutes time left.
Oh, okay. Okay, sir. Actually, I have a question.
Okay.
Actually, in Nepal, and almost 45 journalists affected by the COVID-19, and almost 2,000 journalists lost of the job. But government didn't respond anything. And I wondering in the India and US and South Korea and the UK and Britain, a lot of country also the loss of the many journalist job. What are their situation? What they think about the journalist in the future? Just only thing.
And this question to who?
It's especially the I want Indian senior journalist.
Okay, so then Sis Ray has left already. So
نعمل مداخلة.
Priyanka will
ما بقدر كل
question.
دقيقة أناديها.
Priyanka is okay.
معلش ما في
Okay.
صوت.
Go ahead, Priyanka ji.
Absolutely. So, this pandemic is really something that was unforeseen by everyone in the industry and even by the consumers of the news as well. But of course, it remains to be seen how the entire industry really evolves after the pandemic and during the pandemic as well, as we are dealing with this at the moment, as an industry altogether. But like I had earlier said, that there is going to be a level of increase in the importance that would be given to the journalist and also more established media as well, because there will be a oversupply of information. As we have been talking about social media and the democratization of the news, you can't, in India especially, in a large country like India where the population is dense, you cannot do away with ground reporting and also ground reporting of established news channels or newspapers who would bring out the truth for the people. So, of course, a level of change in the way the journalist carries herself or himself in the ground has changed, because there's a level of added equipment, personal protection kits and all of that we have to wear while we go on the ground, because now we're looking at a double disaster. Everything that we cover apart from the pandemic is something that is going to be apart from the pandemic, because an ongoing situation of the pandemic is already there, but it is something apart from the pandemic as well that we have to deal with. So of course we have to mentally, physically, infrastructurally prepare ourselves for the new era of journalism that is going to come forth as and when we learn to deal with this new normal of the pandemic. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Priyanka ji. Now I have a question. Let me see. To Andrea Wen from Spain, the journalist from Spain. Is she? Andrea Wen from Spain.
Here.
Ah, okay. Okay. Talking about the journalism in Spain, what do you think the implementation of independent media will be effective or not?
Well, in Spain, people question very much the governmental press because it is polarized in extremes. So people barely trust the news or the governmental press. So actually, independent journalism is the most popular thing depending on the city. But actually here people is way more open to consume news from independent journalists. And also journalists who have their own NGOs or they try to work together. So I believe that this has improved after this COVID-19 happened, because now people is bombed daily with news that are quite opposite, because depending on which source you consume, it's so different. So you question and sometimes you feel like you're being lied to. So that has been that has encouraged to more people to be open to consume news from independent journalism. So I believe that's something very good and positive, because I personally trust more and prefer independent journalism, because those are people who care more about to spread the truth in some way, because they are on their own. It's not like they have a governmental agenda they have to follow. So that coming to the freedom of expression, I believe that it's a benefit. And I hope that in the future it grows much more. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you for your answer, Andrea Wen. And again, goes back to Priyanka Sharma. What is the highest rate on tech journalism in South Asian countries related to fact and truth publishing? I believe he is, the way I see, he's asking which countries' tech journalism we should trust or have a belief in South Asia. Priyanka Sharma. Yes.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah. One of the viewers are, to you. Yeah, just to you. Yes.
So, what I think is belief is the death of freedom. And I think all of the people, all of the students, as we have talked about in this entire session, need to be taught research methodology. I think that is the need of the hour for children to be able to comprehend this research methodology at a primary level, so that they can also understand how they have to check the sources, how they have to check the credibility of the news, check the authenticity of a news piece. So, of course, that is something that needs to be focused upon. I think that's a need of the hour as of now.
Thank you. So that's the last question. That was the last question. Now, if you have any queries, any things, any suggestions, any opinions, just we end up with like 30 seconds, 1 minute note. Start from Himanshu Vyasi.
Somnathji, this is a great effort done by you, and I also appreciate Madam Koirala ji, who always spend time in different topics and hear the people all around the world. And we wish all the best for GPK Foundation to do this activity continuously. And you should come up with the whole bunch of your seminar as a book or something like ebook and send it to all our participants. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you for your suggestion. We will do that ebook, definitely. Next, Andrea Wen, please.
I think that it's very good to have people from all around the world caring on this and also trying to do something about it. I believe people have came up with good suggestions and a good reflection to make us think more deeply about the way we understand news and the way we consume this content. So I feel that this forum has been very enriching for me as well. And I'm very glad to being able to listen to all these people. It's really enriching. So I'm very happy to be here. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Andrea. Next, Fardous Askar.
Of course, I appreciate all what happened today. It's very good opportunity to be and to listen for each other from many countries around the world and to put our opinion and our seminar on paper to look forward what we shall do in the future. Because now we're running for the peace meeting for our discussion, our new education, peace education. And in this opportunity, I would like to thank you and to thank everyone listen to me, and especially our collective who make it a good opportunity to know every one of you from his country. Thank you. And I'm proud, very proud, of course, with the feminine as a gender journalists, women journalists around the world who listening to their colleague around the world. Thank you so much and have a good night and have a good day for the other side of the world. Thank you.
Thank you for this, Askar, for your thank you note. And next, Jiang Ming. Yeah. Are you there? Yu Jiang Min?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just very curious about one of our guests today is Andrea Wen. It seems our Wall Street News Agency published the article for her in English. So right. Andrea Wen looks like a Chinese, right? The Wen, I'm interested. So Andrea Wen, you are Chinese origin. You are the same with Dr. Ning An. We've published article for you on December 17th. It's called No Face of God. Is that you?
Yes, I have published a few articles in your newspaper. Yeah.
Yes. Then we are old friends. Yes.
Yeah. But no, I'm not. I'm not Chinese. My name is Chinese indeed, but I'm not.
Oh, okay, but you Wen, W-E-N. That's traditional Chinese Wen, like a premier Wen Jiabo. That is the premier. So the Wen is very famous in Chinese.
Okay.
So you are not Chinese. Okay. A little more question. Yeah. Thank you, Andrea Wen. Go on. Send me articles. I publish for you here. Now we even can do it through Wall Street News satellite.
Let's talk about the point. I'm just talking about taking note. If you have something to say at the end in 30 seconds. Okay, next, Sanam Aurora, sorry.
It's been a great discussion. It's been really enriching, as Andrea said, to hear so many international perspectives from across different sort of, diverse minds and diverse ideas. So I think it's been really, really interesting to hear what all the participants have said and some very insightful questions as well. And thank you so much for inviting us, and Himanshuji as well. Thank you for initiating this discussion. It's been greatly interesting, and I hope that these intellectual talks on a variety of issues keep continuing. And I think that ebook suggestion is fantastic, and Somnath, you should take that up.
Yes, thank you, Sanama Razi. Next, Priyanka Sharma. Please unmute. Please unmute your microphone. Priyanka, please unmute.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yes.
So I would just like to thank the foundation, GPK Foundation America, and also Himanshu Bhai. Thank you so much for letting me be a part of this amazing discussion. I think now that the time is that geographical boundaries are blurring, and for us journalists to have a platform like this to come together and discuss the events of the day and the events of the times that we are living in, I think it's of utmost importance. And this webinar really helped me do just that. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Priyanka ji. Next, Mukunda Subedi. Mukunda Subedi, for your 30-second remarks, unmute your phone. Time is running out, please. Mukunda Subedi, unmute.
Next. Somnath ji, next.
Yes, Mukunda ji, unmute, please. Unmute. Go ahead, 30-second remarks. Unmute. Unmute, Mukunda ji. Next, Tarak Soni.
Yeah, it was a very fantastic session and informative on the journalism, technology and journalism. And I would like to see I would like to receive the ebook for this session, and we'll see the future with the credibility that people will trust in credibility. Really fantastic job you're doing. I would like to be in touch with you all. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. As Himanshu Bhyaji said, yes, definitely we're gonna have the ebook, the global series of virtual conferences that we have concluded so far. This is our 9th series. We try our best to do every week one global series, but due to some circumstances, we couldn't continue for a month. We did 7 series already before a month, and yesterday was 8 series. And today is the 9th series. So we'll continue every week, and definitely we'll bring out the ebook, and it will be much more knowledgeable and easier for all of the global citizens to access it and learn something and gain knowledge for the upcoming generations, which we want better world in the new world. Thanks again. Mukunda Subedi again, are you there?
Thank you very much.
Mukunda Subedi. Next, Arun Sundaria, please.
Yeah, it was a very nice, engaging session, and hopefully everyone listen to each other and do something useful for the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arunji. Bhagawati Khadka. Bhagawati Khadka. Sweta Lama. Swenta Lama. Snehil Desai.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot for inviting me to this session. It was quite informative session. I would like to, I would love if we go as per the suggestion given by this Ms. Sanam Arora and create one individual platform which has been funded by taxpayer all over the globe and set up one neutral news platform, because it's a need of our. Ultimately, we all were discussing about somewhere about the fake news and the news getting suppressed somewhere by the political influence or whatever, or by the fund, the people who are behind the news channel. And it is a common issue around the globe, I feel, after this conference. So I feel we can work out on the same and have some good neutral platform, and which has been beneficial to people, because after all, journalism is something connected to each and every field, because it's a source of information, and we need to check on the authenticity and genuineness. Thanks a lot, sir, for giving me this opportunity to speak. And I would like to stay connected to each and every one of you, and like whatever I can do, I would be like much glad.
Snail bhai, where are you based? Where are you based, Snail bhai?
I am from Gujarat itself.
Where are you based?
Valsad, Gujarat.
Okay, good.
Thank you. Next, last call from Mukunda Suberi.
Oh, okay. Thank you, GPK Foundation. Can you hearing me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Yes.
Actually, I am a base in the Philadelphia, USA right now. And thank you so much for Gita Prasad Karala Foundation USA Chairman, Mr. Somnath Gimire. He is my very good friend since 35 years. He's a childhood friend. He's doing the very good job in here. Actually, you know, some journalists are also the confusing this pandemic time, and also the very hard, and each other also the no sharing the information. I hope this conversation also the sharing lot of knowledge and lot of country situation in the future, what we are going to the facing the big problem, and like that I would like to again to thanks all of you, the another country journalist, and love to also the sometimes I humbly request all of you, and the sometimes you publish our country report, because some big tycoon media ignoring our country in our news. That's why I am humbly request all of you, please give a small space to our news in country. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, Mukunda ji, for your valuable advice. And finally, this is the end minute of our 9th virtual global conference by GPK Foundation America, and our central office located in Kathmandu, Nepal, which is headed by Chairperson Honorable Sujata Koirala. On behalf of our Chairperson Honorable Sujata Koirala, former Deputy Prime Minister of Nepal and former Foreign Minister of Nepal, I would like to thank from the bottom of our heart to all the panelists who joined today's 9th global conference virtually via Zoom platform. Thank you so much again for your valuable time, valuable advices, and your expertise you're sharing on the knowledge of journalism. And the way I'm not a journalist, but the way I see, the way I listen to you guys, and the way I'm learning, it's my learning process. Every day I learn something new. And today, I believe in the post-world of COVID-19, like I say, new normal. In the new world, let us be fearless, favorless, and brideless. That's what I trust on you all. Again, fearless, favorless, and brideless journalists in the field of tech journalism in coming up. And from the bottom of my personal opinion and personal, saying, and I would love to thank you again for giving valuable time and sharing your knowledges. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It was good connecting.
Somnathji, thank you very
so
much.
much for everyone. Thank you.
Also, Sir Dr. Samad Jimmy, I also invite you to attend our Zoom conference on August 28th. I hope you send to this group. I will send you the invitation letter.
But Somnathji will not speak in Chinese. What will happen?
I will ask you again.
We are talking about
reality of Chinese news. I will ask you again.
I will send you how to pronounce your name.
Somnathji, smile is very good.
Thank you.
I agree. I read 26 people here. That's very good. Except me, 25. Okay. To our Wall Street Real Estate Forum of Real Estate. We're doing a forum about real estate. So you just talk anything or just give anything. Okay. So
how is the market today?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And before we leave, can you all shoot your personal email in the chat box so that we can form a group of tech journalism, and we update each of our either personal email or where we can be reached personally, so that we can share.
Absolutely. I think, Suna, that's a great idea. I think we all should stay connected. We should have more such meetings in the future. Absolutely.
Right, exactly. So please do so.
So my email is easy.
Email in your chat box.
Yes. My email is easy. My name is Yu Xiaoming. So we just
can you please write it in the chat box so that I can save it in a format as a group, so that it goes like blast, kind of email blast. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for this. Thank you, Andrea Wen. Thank you.
Looking forward to another one.
Thank you, Priyanka Sharma, Mukund Siveri, Tarak Shuniji, Snehil.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Okay.
Thank you.
This will
take care. Bye.
Effective. This is an effective program. We all must not only talk. Let us work. Now time has come to prove our work effectively. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Thank you.